We're now going to examine what we call the units of activity method for calculating depreciation. It's also called units of output or units of production, depending on what terms you're using. So this method can only be used if you can actually count something. That means maybe my delivery truck has an odometer. I can count my miles. I can count a piece of equipment by how many hours it's used, or a piece of manufacturing equipment by the quantity produced. So this is called units of activity. So the formula is very similar to the other one. Let's move on. Here's the formula. This is a two-step formula. So I'm going to take the cost minus residual value. Remember, this is called the depreciable cost, divided by total estimated units of activity. Now, this is different than straight line because straight line says divided by useful life. But this says what is the expected output of whatever it is that you are counting over the life of the item. Once you find that, that's called the depreciable. Once you calculate that, that's the depreciation per unit. Then you need to take that and multiply it times how many units were produced or used in that period. So this is a two-step process. Write this formula down now. Pause your video, write this formula down now. Two-step process. So we're going to use some of the same information. My forklift cost me $24,000, the residual is $2,000, and it's estimated to have a useful life of 10,000 operating hours over the life. So I'm going to do 24,000 times 2, which is my depreciable cost, divided by 10,000 hours, which is $2.20 per hour. So the first year the forklift was only operated for 21 hours. So I'll take the $2.20 per hour times 2,100, and I'm going to get $4,620 depreciation expense for the first year. So you can see that every year this is going to change based upon the actual usage or output. So this is not as common to use because people like to know what the depreciation expense is, but this is more realistic if you've got something you can count, such as the odometer, such as machinery that produces so many widgets, such as a copy machine that has so many copies. So here's my journal entry for this one. Again, the journal entries are always going to be the same. Debit the expense, credit the accumulation depreciation. But the key thing with here is you need to absolutely know how many hours each period that it was actually used. The $2, let's go back to the slide. The $2.20 per hour will stay consistent throughout the life, but you'll have to multiply it each year by how many hours. And so here's a list of how many different hours. So each year, my depreciation expense would be 220 times this number, 220 times this, 220 times this, and so on. However, this has to equal 10,000 hours. Now, if I'm over 10,000 hours, it just means that I no longer can depreciate from that once I hit 10,000 hours. So here's a little flow chart. Each year, it's a different number because it's 220 times the number of hours. So you can see here, here's year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And so here's my depreciation expense per year. It's all over the map, but it's based upon how many units produced. Here is my book value. Notice my book value is always my cost minus the depreciation. So year 1 book value is the 24,000 minus the 4620, which is 19,380. Okay? So then I'm going to, for year 2, I'm going to, from 19,380, I'm going to actually subtract 3,300 to get this, till I get to 2,000. Because residual value will never drop below, book value will never drop below residual value. This is the easiest method to do because it's straightforward. You always know how many hours each year. You're never going to have to come up with that number. And if a vehicle or a piece of equipment isn't used very much in that year, then it actually might go longer than 5 years. Even though it's estimated to be 5 years, it might go longer than that. So this is called units of activity or units of production or output.